There we go. Okay, so my next example, x squared plus x plus y plus, x squared plus xy plus x plus y. So again, factor by grouping, my clue is 4 terms. And so with those 4 terms, I'm going to group up the first 2, group up the second 2. The directions will specifically say to do factor by grouping. Now in the first set, x squared plus xy, I'm looking for what do just these 2 terms have in common? Well, they both have an x in common. X squared, divide out an x, leaves me with an x behind. Xy, divide out an x, leaves me with a y behind. Carry down my middle sign. XY, those 2 things don't have anything in common. And so this is something you may have run into in the homework. If the 2 numbers don't have anything in common, the only thing that I can pull out is a 1 because they don't have anything in common. So the greatest common factor is 1. And then of course, divide out 1 means that you're not changing anything. Write down what's being repeated, x plus y, and then write down the leftover x plus 1. It's worth mentioning for all of these, your check is to FOIL. And so we'll check this one. I've got x plus y times x plus 1. Well, I want to make sure that when I FOIL it, I get back to the original question. And so that's what I'm looking for. So FOIL first, x times x gives me x squared. Outer, x times 1 gives me 1x. Inner, y times x, well, I can write that as xy. And then last, y times 1 or 1y. Well, there's no like terms, so I have x squared plus xy plus y. Now that order is a little different than my question. My question has xy. I'm looking at right here. My question has xy plus x. This one has x plus xy. Order doesn't matter. That's the commutative property, just as long as the actual numbers, or in this case, letters, are the same within the problem. Questions? Thumbs up? You guys good? Good so far? Okay. All right, good deal. So here's what we spent this week doing is factoring trinomials. I just picked 4 random ones. I did 2 from 13.2 and 2 from 13.3. And so the only difference between 13.2 and 13.3 was in 13.2, this top row, we had a equals 1, or we didn't have a number in front of x squared. In 13.3, we added in, okay, well, what changes when we actually put a number in front? The process is very similar. You guys have seen this thing a ton of times now, but that's just kind of the outline of how I'm going to factor. With factoring, it just comes with practice over and over and over and over again until it finally sticks. And so this first one, factoring a trinomial meaning that it has 3 terms, x squared plus 5x plus 4. And so I told you guys that I would recommend the first thing that you do is write down A, B, and C for all of these. Up until now, I haven't had an A, B, and C because A, B, and C goes specifically with trinomials. And if you recall, this was my standard form, which it was at the top of the screen, but standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So a being the number in front of the x squared, b the number in front of x, and then c being the constant. And so in my problem, I'm going to write out a, b, and c. So the number in front of x squared, well, I don't see 1, so I can write a 1. The number in front of x is a 5. And then the number in front, or sorry, the constant, the number in the back, 4. So I have A is 1, B is 5, and C is 4. Now we use the X to just kind of help organize our work. A times C always goes on top, B on the bottom. A times C, 1 times 4 is going to give me 4, and then B is 5. All right, so now I'm looking for what are two numbers that multiply to the top and two numbers that add to the bottom. And so the easier way is to find that all the numbers that multiply to 4, there's less numbers that multiply to 4. And so my numbers that multiply to 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Those are the only two options. So of those numbers, which two of those will add to 5? Well, 1 and 4, because 1 plus 4 gives me 5. And so the two numbers I'm going to use are positive 1 and positive 4. Now, I recommended before you move on from here in your calculator, go ahead and multiply 1 times 4, gives me 4, and then add 1 plus 4, yes, it gives me 5. That's your kind of your first check, if you will. I see all the time that people get the right numbers, but they get their signs flipped around, especially if it's one positive and one negative. So I can't encourage that enough to just make sure you check before you move on that these numbers do actually multiply to the top and add to the bottom. Now for these, we had the shortcut. And the shortcut only works if A equals 1. So let's make a note of that just to remind ourselves. So if A equals 1, you can go straight to using the shortcut where you just go to the parentheses. You don't have to go through factor by grouping when A equals 1. So because the variable is x squared, I'm going to have x, and then my shortcut says, well, I can write my two numbers down, plus 1, plus 4. So to check this, I can FOIL it. Okay, so first, x times x gives me x squared. Outer x times 4 gives me 4x. Inner 1 times x gives me 1x. And then last 1 times 4 gives me 4. Combine like terms, 4x plus 1x is 5x. Carry everything down. And that is the original question. And so the good news is I got it right. And so this would be your final answer. Good so far? Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. So the next one says x squared minus 6x minus 27. So I still have that a equals 1. So I'm still technically in 13.1, meaning I can use that shortcut. I need to write out my a, b, and c. So a, the number in front of x squared, technically that's a 1. B, the number in front of x, negative 6. And then C, negative 27. Just a reminder, the negative, how that's minus 6x minus 27, that negative sign is going to go into A, B, and C. So I'll have B equals negative 6 and C equals negative 27. All right, from there, I'm going to find A times C and B. A times C, 1 times negative 27 is going to give me negative 27. And then B, negative 6. And so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 27 and add to negative 6. And so I'm going to list off the numbers that multiply to 27. 1 and 27, 3 and 9. I would say when A times C is negative, that's probably the trickier of the few, because we wrote down way back at the beginning when we started factoring trinomials that if A times C, let's see if I can zoom in, there we go. If A times C is negative, factors will be an opposite sign, and the bigger number will match the sign of B. And so we see that in this example that A times C is negative 27. So this tells me that factors will be the opposite signs. And I need to figure out which one's going to be positive, which one's going to be negative. And so I told you on that chart that the bigger number of the factors will be the same sign as B. And so going back to my example, I have negative 27. Well, the two numbers that could get me to 6 are 3 and 9. I know that my signs are going to be opposite. And so the bigger number is going to match the sign of B. Well, B is negative, and so that means 9 has to be negative, 3 has to be positive. Before you move on, check this. So in your calculator, in your head, wherever, -9 times 3, I'll give you a second to type that in. -9 times 3 gives me -27. -9 plus 3 gives me -6. Please do not skip that check. I see all the time that people get those signs mixed up. All right, from there, now because this one has a equal 1, I can use the shortcut. So I can go straight to my parentheses. So because it's x squared, I'm going to have x and x, and then I'm going to just carry down my numbers, -9 plus 3. And so that will be my answer. We are going to check this one because we got a little bit of time. And so, of course, we use FOIL to check. Well, FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. So first, I've got x times x, x squared. Outer, x times 3, 3x. Inner, -9 times x, -9x. And last, -9 times 3, -27. Simplify the middle or combine like terms. 3x minus 9x is going to give me -6x. Carry everything down. And that is what my question started with. So I do know that I got that problem right. Any questions of that one? We good? Thumbs up, head nod. Okay, all right, good. So that was 13.2. 13.2 was A equals 1. Every single one of those was A equals 1. If it wasn't, then the first thing that you had to do was probably factor out a GCF. I didn't do any in this specific video, but you can go back into D2L to our class videos. We did several of, well, at least one or two in class from 13.2 and from 13.3. So the next example, now we're moving into 13.3. So I've got 6x squared plus 11x plus 5. And so as soon as I see that what we call the leading coefficient, as soon as I see that first term is not 1, that's kind of my clue. Okay, there's either A, a GCF, which 6, 11, and 5 don't have anything in common, or B, which is this one, B, it's 13.3. So I'm just going to factor it like normal. I'm going to list off my A, B, and C. And so A is the number in front of x squared, which is 6 in this example. B is the number in front of x, 11. And C is the number in the back, or the constant, 5. And so A, B, and C, I've got 6 is A, B is 11, and C is 5. So I'm going to go to fill this in to kind of just organize my work. A times C on top. Well, A times C, 6 times 5 is going to give me 30. B goes on the bottom, or 11. So I'm looking for two numbers that will multiply to 30 and add to 11. The signs of these, because A times C is positive, means that both signs are going to match B. And so both of these are going to be positive and positive. Good. So the two numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 11, you got it, Kayla? I'm going to go ahead and list off all the multiples of 30. Nope, not a 4. Okay, so the two of those that will get me to 11 are 5 and 6. They're both going to be positive. Before you move on, I can't emphasize enough to check this. And so in your calculator, in your head, 5 times 6 gives me 30. 5 plus 6 gets me 11. So I know that I got the right numbers. Some of these, there's several options that look like they could be right, especially with 6. When 6 is on top, it gets a little fuzzy. So just make sure you check it. Now this one was where we couldn't really go straight to the shortcut. We had to go through factor by grouping. So I'm going to rewrite the problem so that I have more space. So where there was an 11x, I'm going to replace 11x with 5x and 6x. So I took those two numbers I just found and I replaced them into, I took out 11x and I replaced with 5x and 6x. I'm going to carry everything else down. And now this turns into factor by grouping. So group up the first two, group up the second two. All right, the first two, 6x squared plus 5x. Well, 6 and 5 don't have anything in common, but x squared and x have something in common, so I can take out an x. When I factor out an x of the first term, I'm left with 6x plus 5. Carry down your sign. Well, here's another one where we're seeing 6x and 5 don't have anything in common. So I can say that's a 1. And then I'll be left with 6x plus 5 still inside. Write down what's being repeated. 6x plus 5. So what's being repeated. And then write down what's left over. X plus 1. And so that is my final answer. I can check all of these, every single one on the test. You can check by foiling or distributing, depending on, I'll come back to your question, Kayla. Don't let me forget. Depending on how many terms you have outside. So a binomial times a binomial is FOIL. So I'm going to check this by foiling. So first 6x times 6x, 6x squared. Outer 6x times 1, 6x. Inner 5 times x, 5x. And last 5 times 1, 5. Combine like terms, which will give me 11x, and then carry everything down. I did get my question, so I know that I got it correct. I keep saying to check by FOIL, but if you really like the box method better, like we did in chapter 12, you can do box method too. It works the same. You'll get the same answer. So the question was, how many sections are in this test? We actually only have one real section left. 13.4 is special cases, and so we'll learn a couple of formulas for the special cases of factoring. They're the same special cases that we looked at back when we were multiplying. 13.5 is a review chapter or review section. It's just going over a whole bunch of factoring review. And so while we technically have 2 sections left, only one of the sections has new material in it. So on Monday, we'll look at 13.4, the special cases. And then on Wednesday, we will do a nice kind of factoring review. And what I have for those notes is just a whole bunch of factoring problems that we'll just work through in class to kind of give you guys just more practice with this. Okay. All right, the last example I have for you guys. So we've got 5a squared minus 7a plus 2. And so because I see that that first thing, that leading coefficient is what we called it, that first number is not 1, that's my clue to, okay, this is 13.3. I do want to check for GCF. I didn't do any GCFs in this specific video, but 5, 7, and 2 don't have anything in common. Those are all prime numbers. And so I don't have a GCF for this particular problem, so I just go straight to write down A, B, and C, fill in the X, and then my factor by grouping. And so my first A is going to be the number, in this case, in front of A squared. So A is 5. B is the number in front of A, which is kind of confusing, -7. And then C is the number in the back, or the constant. Okay, so I've got A equals 5, B is -7, and C is 2. All right, so from there, I'm going to fill in my X to kind of keep me organized. A times C on top, B on the bottom. All right, so A times C, 5 times 2 is going to give me 10. And then B will give me -7, or it is -7. Okay, I'm looking for 2 numbers that will multiply to 10 and add to -7. Well, because A times C is positive, it's going to be the same sign, and they're both going to be negative because B is negative, and that was something we wrote down back at the top of this page. We also wrote it down at the top of 13.2 notes and 13.3. So I'm going to have negative, negative. All right, well, my factors of 10, I've got 1 and 10, 2 and 5. So the 2 of those that will get me to 7 would be 2 and 5. I'll have -2, -5. Before you move on, check it. So -2 times -5 is +10, so I'm good. -2 plus -5 is -7, so I'm good. Okay, so from there, where there was a -7, I'm going to replace with -2x, or not x, negative 2a and negative 5a. Carry everything else down. Okay, so I took these two numbers and I replaced them where that middle term was. All right, so I'm going to do factor by grouping. So I'm going to group up the first two, group up the second two. I've got 5a squared minus 2a. Well, 5 and 2 don't have anything in common, but a squared and a have an a in common. So 5a squared take out an a is going to give me 5a. Negative 2a take out an a is going to just leave me with negative 2. And so that's that first set of parentheses. Carry down my middle sign. 5a and 2, they don't have anything in common, so we're seeing this again. They have a 1 is the greatest common factor. 5a and 2, I'm dividing out a negative 1. So negative 5a divided by negative 1 is going to give me 5a. Positive 2 divided by negative 1 is going to give me negative 2. This sign right here just says change the sign of everything after it. So it was negative 5a, it became positive 5a, it was positive 2, so it became negative 2. Dividing by negative 1 just means change the sign. All right, I'm going to write down what's being repeated, 5a minus 2, and then write down the leftover, a minus 1. I can check it. On this test, you'll have plenty of time to check all of these. So I'm going to check by FOIL or box method. So 5a minus 2 times a minus 1. First, 5a times a, 5a squared. Outer, 5a times negative 1, negative 5a. Inner, negative 2 times a, negative 2a. And then last, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 2. Combine like terms and have negative 7a. Carry everything else down. And so I did get it correct. So those are the only ones I have for you. Do you guys have any other questions? I did post, we've got a couple of minutes left together. I did post on D2L this factoring flow chart, and I'm going to pull it up. That's probably not going to, I'm going to maybe it's loading. I'm going to pull it up to just kind of talk to you guys about it. I would recommend printing this thing out. It's a very, very good resource in terms of sorting things out. And so I know that this is a lot of information. It's a lot of different, like, okay, well, how do I know to do this one? How do I know to do this one? So I posted this flow chart on D2L for you guys, and hopefully it'll kind of sort through when do I do what. So what this thing says, and let's see, I don't really know if, here we go. So you always obviously start at start. Look for GCF first, and then this kind of sorts out based off of the number of terms. If you have 4 terms, it's going to be factor by grouping, which these chapters are wrong because this I made for Math 102, but factor by grouping. If it has 3 terms, for us, we did rainbow method, so that kind of sorts that out. 2 terms, this is what we're going to do next week. And so I posted this so that it kind of like, it just kind of maybe helps sort some things out. I know that this is a lot and there's a lot writing on it because this test can't be dropped. So I tried to just make something that could help organize better what do I do, if that makes sense. As you guys are working, if you have questions, please let me know. I'm available this weekend. I may not be available as quickly, but I am certainly still available. So if you guys don't have any other questions, you are free to go. I already wrote your names down for the test, but if you don't have questions, have a great weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday.